The cold winds of the north whipped against the dragon-prowed longship, its carved visage frozen in a snarl that mirrored the ferocity of its captain. Ragnar, a name whispered in fear and reverence across the halls of Christendom, stood at the prow, his piercing gaze fixed not on the horizon, but beyond it. What drove this man, a farmer, a warrior, a king, a legend, to defy the gods themselves and carve his name into the stones of eternity? The story of Ragnar Lodbrok, shrouded in the mists of legend and history, remains one of the most enigmatic in Viking lore. Was he a single man, or an amalgamation of several chieftains whose exploits were woven into a singular myth? But beyond the sagas of dragon slayings, treasure hoards, and doomed quests, lies a portrait of a man navigating the volatile currents of ambition, family, and fate. To unravel Ragnar's psyche, we must first immerse ourselves in the world he inhabited. The 9th century was an era of upheaval, where the Norsemen emerged from their fjords to reshape Europe with axe and sail. This was not merely a time of conquest, but one of survival, where harsh winters and scarce resources drove men to seek their fortunes across the seas. Early accounts of Ragnar, real or apocryphal, paint a picture of a man marked by extraordinary ambition and ingenuity. He is said to have risen from relatively humble origins, an archetypal trickster and dreamer whose charm and cunning set him apart. Tales of his exploits often emphasize his intellect as much as his strength, depicting a man who could outwit kings and outmaneuver armies. Psychologically, this blend of audacity and resourcefulness reveals a complex personality shaped by the challenges of his time. The Norse cultural ethos, with its emphasis on fame and legacy, likely played a significant role in shaping Ragnar's worldview. In the sagas, we see a man deeply concerned with how he will be remembered, a preoccupation that aligns with the concept of generativity, a drive to create something enduring that will outlast one's life. But Ragnar's psyche was not solely defined by ambition. His relationships, particularly with his wives and children, reveal a deeply human vulnerability. Yet their eventual separation, followed by his subsequent marriages, hints at the tension between personal desire and the pragmatic demands of leadership. As Ragnar grew older and his reputation swelled, the weight of his legacy seemed to press more heavily upon him. His sons, Bjorn Ironside, Ivar the Boneless, Sigurd Snake in the Eye, and others, became extensions of his ambition, each carrying a fragment of his indomitable spirit. This duality of pride and insecurity is emblematic of a leader who sees his own mortality reflected in the bright futures of his offspring. The psychological strain of leadership in the Viking Age cannot be overstated. As a chieftain, Ragnar would have been tasked not only with securing resources, but with maintaining the loyalty of his followers in a fiercely competitive and often brutal environment. Every raid, every battle, every decision carried with it the risk of failure, and with failure, the collapse of his status and influence. For a man like Ragnar, whose very identity was tied to his success, this pressure must have been immense. The saga of Ragnar's death offers profound insight into his character. Captured by King Aella of Northumbria, Ragnar is said to have been thrown into a pit of venomous snakes, a grim execution that has cemented his place in Viking lore. According to the sagas, Ragnar met his death with defiance, uttering the now famous line, "How the little pigs will grunt when they hear how the old boar suffered." In this moment, Ragnar's legacy transforms from personal ambition to familial vengeance, as his sons unite to avenge his death in a campaign of destruction that would devastate Anglo-Saxon England. Ragnar's defiance in the face of death can be understood through the lens of existential psychology. Confronting his mortality, he chose to affirm his identity and legacy rather than succumb to despair. His declaration is both a taunt to his enemies and a rallying cry for his descendants, encapsulating the Viking belief in the power of memory and the triumph of narrative over oblivion. Yet, it is also worth considering the toll such a life might have taken on Ragnar's psyche. The drive to achieve greatness often comes at the expense of inner peace. In his quieter moments, did he ponder the cost of his ambitions? Did he feel the burden of the lives lost in his name, the homes burned, the kingdom shattered? Modern psychological frameworks might diagnose Ragnar as a man grappling with the weight of narcissistic ambition and the inevitable existential dread that accompanies it. His life was a constant balancing act between the pursuit of glory and the fear of being forgotten. This tension is universal, transcending the boundaries of time and culture, but in Ragnar, it finds an especially vivid expression. The legends of Ragnar Lodbrok endure, not because they depict a perfect hero, but because they capture the complexity of the human condition. His story is one of ambition, tempered by vulnerability, strength entwined with doubt, and a relentless pursuit of meaning in a world defined by chaos. Whether he was a single historical figure or a composite of many, Ragnar represents the archetype of the flawed hero, a man whose greatness is inseparable from his humanity. As we stand on the shores of history, gazing back at the shadow Ragnar cast across the turbulent seas of the Viking Age, we are reminded of the timeless questions his life evokes. What drives a person to seek greatness? How does one balance ambition with the bonds of love and family? And what ultimately is the cost of carving one's name into the annals of time? For Ragnar Lodbrok, the answers are etched not only in the sagas, but in the silence that follows them, the haunting echo of a man who burned brightly, fiercely, and all too briefly. His legend endures, not as a testament to perfection, but as a mirror to our own struggles, triumphs, and the eternal quest for a legacy that outlasts the fleeting shadow of our lives.